Emily Carter. Senshi, people always tell you that you'll remember the happiest day of your life forever. No one tells you that you'll remember the most humiliating 30 seconds with even greater clarity. I still remember every detail. The scent of garlic and fresh basil drifting through the restaurant. The soft glow of candlelight reflecting off polished wine glasses. The pianist quietly playing my boyfriend's favorite song. The weight of the velvet ring box resting in my trembling hand. 3 years. 3 years of building what I believed was a future together. For months, Daniel had been leaving little clues that made me believe we were heading toward marriage. He lingered over engagement videos online. He showed me photos of romantic proposals. At one of our friends' weddings, he'd leaned against me and whispered, "Imagine if someone proposed somewhere like this." Later, he became obsessed with one little Italian restaurant downtown. If someone ever proposed there, he'd joked more than once, I'd probably never stop talking about it. He laughed when he said it. I smiled every time. Looking back now, I wonder if we were hearing completely different conversations. I'd spent months preparing. The ring wasn't something I grabbed impulsively. I met with jewelers, compared stones, customized every detail based on everything Daniel had admired over the years. 3 months of savings disappeared into that tiny velvet box. I never regretted spending it. Not then. The restaurant staff knew the plan. They dimmed the lights exactly on cue. His favorite music began playing softly through the speakers. Every heartbeat seemed louder than the last. Daniel looked across the table at me, smiling. "What are you smiling about?" he asked. I swallowed. My hands were shaking. Before fear could stop me, I stood, walked around the table, and lowered myself onto one knee. The entire dining room slowly became quiet. Daniel's smile faded into confusion. I opened the ring box. "Danielle." My voice nearly cracked. "I love you more than I've ever been able to put into words. These last 3 years have been the happiest of my life. I can't imagine a future without you." His eyes widened. I smiled through my nerves. "Will you marry me?" For one heartbeat, nothing happened. Then he laughed. Not a nervous chuckle. Not an awkward laugh because he was overwhelmed. A real laugh. His head tipped backward. His shoulders shook. His eyes watered. "Oh my God." He covered his mouth, still laughing. "Wait." Another laugh escaped him. "Emily." He wiped tears from his face. "You're serious?" More laughter. I thought this was a joke. The room became completely silent. Forks stopped moving. Glasses froze halfway to lips. Every pair of eyes turned toward me. I stayed exactly where I was, still kneeling, still holding the ring, waiting. Maybe he'd realize what he'd done. Maybe he'd apologize. Maybe he'd say yes. Instead, "Oh my God," he said between laughs. "Get up." People nearby shifted uncomfortably. "You're embarrassing yourself." Those 4 words hurt more than the laughter. Something inside me simply stopped. No shouting, no crying, no dramatic speech. I slowly closed the ring box, stood up, looked at him one last time. His smile had faded now. Confusion replaced amusement. "Emily." I turned toward the exit. "Wait." He pushed his chair back. "Where are you going?" I kept walking. Outside. Cool evening air hit my face. Only after reaching my car did I realize my hands were still shaking. I drove without turning on the radio, without answering my phone, without crying. Shock has a strange way of protecting you. By the time I reached the apartment I'd been staying in, while renovations at our house were finishing, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Daniel. Again. 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 Calls. Message. Voicemails. Then his older sister. Then friends. Then unknown numbers. I ignored every single one. Inside the apartment, darkness wrapped around me. I didn't bother turning on any lights. I sat on the couch, still wearing the same clothes, still holding the unopened ring box, for nearly an hour. 3 years. 3 years with someone who thought my deepest vulnerability was comedy. Eventually, I stood. If Daniel had taught me anything that night, it was that emotion couldn't solve this. Preparation could. My first phone call wasn't to a friend. It wasn't to my mother. It was to my attorney. He answered, despite the late hour. "I need legal advice." He immediately recognized the seriousness in my voice. I explained everything. We weren't married. Daniel had been living in my house for 18 months. The utility bills carried both our names, but the mortgage, the deed, everything legal belonged solely to me. I need to know my rights regarding removing someone from my property. He walked me through every step. Everything had to be documented. Everything had to remain legal. 30 days written notice. No changing locks before then. No emotional decisions. Only legal ones. When we finished, I thanked him. Then I made my second call. The bank. Daniel had been an authorized user on one of my credit cards, originally for emergencies, lately, shopping, subscriptions, little purchases that suddenly felt very different. I removed his authorization immediately. Third call. The travel agency. We had planned a vacation next month. The cancellation cost me the deposit. I barely cared. Fourth call. The jeweler. What's your return policy? 14 days. 80% refund. I thanked them. Set a reminder in my phone. Then I opened my messaging app. My fingers hovered above the screen for nearly a minute. Finally, I typed, "You made your feelings very clear tonight. Tomorrow I'll come by the house so we can discuss your moving arrangements. Please communicate through email from now on." I pressed send, then blocked his number, his social media, every app, every possible way he could reach me. The phone continued vibrating anyway. Calls from friends, calls from his sister, unknown numbers. Someone even tried FaceTiming me. I turned the phone completely off. Silence. Real silence. For the first time, all evening. Tears finally came. Not loud, sobbing, just quiet tears sliding down my face as one memory kept replaying. His laughter, over and over, like an echo refusing to die, somewhere deep inside me. I already knew tomorrow wouldn't be about fixing our relationship. It would be the first day of ending it. The next afternoon, I drove to the house with the formal notice folded neatly inside my purse. My house. That phrase had never felt heavy before. When I unlocked the front door, Daniel was sitting on the couch with his older sister, Rebecca, and 2 of his friends. All 3 looked at me like I had committed some unforgivable crime. Daniel stood first. "You blocked me." His voice shook with anger. "How dare you block me after embarrassing me like that?" I stared at him. "After I embarrassed you?" Rebecca crossed her arms. "You could have handled it privately." I almost laughed. Privately, as if Daniel hadn't laughed in my face in front of an entire restaurant. I kept my voice calm. "You laughed at my proposal." Daniel snapped. "Because it was ridiculous. We talked about this. I told you I wasn't ready for marriage." "No," I said. "You hinted about marriage for months. The restaurant, the proposal videos, the comments at Megan's wedding, the ring styles you kept showing me." His face tightened. I was joking. That was the first moment I truly understood. Not the restaurant, not the laughter. This. He wanted every romantic hint to count only if it benefited him. The second it required honesty. Suddenly, it was all a joke. Rebecca stepped closer. "Maybe if you actually listened to him, you'd know he wasn't ready." "Stay out of this," I said quietly. "This is between Daniel and me." Daniel's expression hardened. You don't get to kick me out. I live here. I reached into my purse and unfolded the paper. You have 30 days. He stared at it. What is that? Formal written notice to vacate. His friend grabbed it first. Scanning the page. This is insane. Daniel's voice cracked. You're punishing me for being honest. No, I said. I'm protecting myself after being humiliated. He stepped closer. You're acting like a child. This is exactly why I wasn't ready to marry you. Something in my chest flinched, but I didn't let him see it. Then we agree. I said. Marriage is off the table. So is free housing. Rebecca read the notice more carefully. Her face changed. Daniel noticed. What? She looked at him. Quieter now. This is legal. She can do this. The room went still. Daniel's anger shifted into panic. I can't believe you're doing this over one mistake. One mistake, I asked. He swallowed. I panicked. You laughed for almost a full minute. His eyes reddened. Emily. Then you told me I was embarrassing myself. No one had an answer for that. I walked past him toward the bedroom. I'm taking some of my things. You have 30 days to arrange yours. He followed me down the hall. You're going to regret this. Maybe. You're making me homeless. You have parents. You have your sister. You have friends sitting in my living room. I packed clothes. Me laptop. Passport. Legal documents. Jewelry. And anything I couldn't risk leaving behind. Daniel stood in the doorway. Crying now. It should have moved me. A week earlier. It would have destroyed me. But I kept seeing him laughing under soft restaurant lights. He said, My dad's a lawyer. Good. He'll sue you. For what? Receiving proper notice to leave a house you don't own. His mouth opened, closed. I zipped the bag. Rebecca followed me to the door. You're colder than I thought. I looked back once. No. I just finally got warm enough to stop freezing for someone else. Then I left. The first week after that was chaos. Daniel didn't email an apology. He didn't take responsibility. Instead, I started hearing stories. Mutual friends told me he was saying I had proposed as a test, that I had pressured him for months, that I had used the ring to trap him, that he laughed because he thought I was manipulating him. Half our friend group believed him. The other half didn't. That was when I learned grief doesn't only take the person, it takes the room around them too. Then the dirty tricks started. Someone scratched my car. All 4 doors. Deep lines carved into the paint. I had no proof, only timing. Then my apartment manager called about noise complaints, loud music, party, stomping, at night. I worked from home in near silence. I didn't even own speakers. Then came the credit card charges, online purchases, clothes, electronics, delivery food. Almost $800. Daniel's card access had already been canceled. But apparently, he'd saved a photo of the numbers. I reported the fraud, got the money back eventually. But every call, every form, every dispute felt like another hand reaching out from that restaurant, pulling me back into humiliation. Then he changed the locks. I discovered it when I came by for more clothes. My key wouldn't turn. For a second, I just stood there on the porch, staring at the door of the house I owned. Then I called the police. When they arrived, I showed them everything. My driver's license, the deed, the notice to vacate, the attorney's instructions. Daniel opened the door, red-faced and furious. She keeps harassing me. He told the officers. She can't just come in whenever she wants. One officer looked at the documents, then at me. You own the property. Yes. And he's not on the deed or mortgage. No. The officer turned to Daniel. Sir. She is within her rights to access her property. You have legal occupancy during the notice period. But you cannot lock her out. Daniel's voice rose. She's being abusive. She's controlling me financially. I have nowhere to go. The second officer stayed calm. You need to make arrangements before the notice expires. After they left, Daniel exploded. You're destroying my life. I stepped inside and picked up another box of my belongings. No. I'm removing you from mine. Where am I supposed to go? Your parents. Rebecca. A hotel. One of the friends who keeps calling me heartless. You know I can't afford rent alone. I looked at him. Then you shouldn't have laughed at the person giving you a home. His face twisted. It was a mistake. Mistakes have consequences. That evening, his friend showed up again. En intervention. Apparently, one of them stood in my kitchen and said, "You need to let him stay until he finds a place." No. Emily. This is cruel. No. This is clear. You were together 3 years. That ended when he laughed at my proposal. Daniel stood behind them. Silence. For once. He let everyone else speak for him. And somehow, that made it worse. Because I realized he didn't want reconciliation. He wanted rescue. He wanted me to absorb the humiliation. Pay the bills. Keep the house open. And let him rewrite the story until he became the victim. I picked up my keys. You have the date. Be out by then. As I walked to my car, I heard Daniel shout from the doorway, "You'll miss me when this house is empty." I stopped for 1 second. Then I kept walking. Because the truth was worse than anything I could have said back. The house had already felt empty with him inside it. 3 weeks passed. Only 1 week remained before Daniel's deadline to move out. By then, I had almost convinced myself the worst was behind me. I was wrong. On a quiet Tuesday morning, I was reviewing reports at work when my receptionist called, "Emily, there's a man here insisting he has a lunch meeting with you." "I don't have one scheduled." A minute later, Daniel's father walked straight into my office. He didn't knock. He didn't smile. He simply closed the door behind him and stared at me like I was the reason his family had fallen apart. "We need to talk about my son." I slowly stood. "No," I answered evenly. "We don't." His jaw tightened. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." "I don't think so." He made one bad decision. I looked him directly in the eyes. He laughed while I was proposing to him in front of 50 people. He panicked. He mocked me. You pressured him. I almost smiled, not because anything was funny, but because I had heard that accusation so many times. It had become predictable. I never pressured Daniel into anything. You expected marriage. I expected honesty. He stepped closer. "My son isn't a liar. My house says otherwise." His face darkened. "He's still living there because you're trying to ruin him." I gave him 30 days legal notice. "You've turned this into a business transaction." "No," I replied quietly. He did that the moment he treated my love like entertainment. For several long seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he slammed his hand against my desk. "You're destroying his future." The sound echoed through the office. Almost immediately, security appeared at the doorway. One guard looked at Daniel's father. "Sir, you'll need to leave." He pointed a finger at me. "You'll regret this." "I already regret something," I answered, "believing your son wanted the same future I did." He continued shouting, while security escorted him toward the elevator. Half the office watched. Just like the restaurant, different audience. Some humiliation. Only this time, I wasn't the one being laughed at. An hour later, my manager asked me into his office. What happened? I told him everything. The proposal, the breakup, the eviction notice, Daniel's father, He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. Emily. He sighed. That's brutal. It is. You need time off. I shook my head. No. You sure? This is the only place that still feels normal. He nodded slowly. If you need anything, let me know. That simple sentence almost made me cry. Not because it solved anything, because someone finally believed me without asking for proof. Unfortunately, outside work, the war continued. Even though I'd blocked Daniel everywhere, screenshots found their way to me. Long social media posts, photos of him crying, captions about emotional abuse, financial control, toxic women, manipulation. According to Daniel's version of events, I had thrown him onto the street because he didn't accept my proposal. Every important detail had disappeared. The laughter, the humiliation, the public rejection, all gone. Then someone sent me another screenshot, a crowdfunding page. Daniel had started a fundraiser, emergency housing fund. The description painted him as a victim escaping an abusive relationship. It raised a few $100s before people began asking uncomfortable questions. The comments slowly stopped. The donations dried up. Still, seeing strangers call me abusive hurt more than I expected. Then my mother called. Emily. Her voice sounded unusually careful. Daniel's mother contacted me. Of course she had. Mom continued. She says you threw him out with nowhere to go. I gave him 30 days. She said you're punishing him. I closed my eyes. Mom? What really happened? For several seconds, I couldn't answer. Not because I didn't know how, because saying it aloud made it real all over again. Finally, I whispered. I proposed. Silence. He laughed. More silence. He thought I was joking. I swallowed. He laughed in front of an entire restaurant. When I finished explaining, my mother didn't speak for almost half a minute. Then she quietly asked. He actually laughed. Yes. And told you that you were embarrassing yourself. Yes. Her voice changed instantly. Oh. Sweetheart. That was all she said at first. Just those 2 words. Then she became furious. Later she admitted she called Daniel's mother back. Apparently the conversation lasted less than 5 minutes. She told her exactly what she thought about raising a son who could publicly humiliate someone who loved him. Neither family spoke again after that. Finally, move-out day arrived. I rented a moving truck. I also requested a police officer to be present, not because I wanted drama, because I wanted none. When I unlocked the front door, Daniel wasn't there. Rebecca was. She was carefully sealing boxes with packing tape. He couldn't face you, she said. I nodded once. I just want everything removed. She sighed. You really loved him. I did. And you're still doing this? I'm finishing what he started. For nearly 3 hours, we loaded furniture, clothing, electronics, and dozens of cardboard boxes into the truck. Rebecca never stopped making little comments. He never thought you'd go this far. You've changed. You used to forgive people. Each remark landed softly. None changed anything. Eventually the truck was full. I held out my hand. Keys. Rebecca frowned. He wants to keep one. No. In case he forgot something. No. She hesitated. Then placed every house key and garage remote into my palm. Even then, I changed every lock that same afternoon. Not because I thought Daniel would return, because peace deserved new keys. After the locksmith finished, I walked through every room alone. The silence felt unfamiliar. Not painful, just unfamiliar. In one closet, I found a small box. Inside were framed photographs, an old necklace, several novels, a hoodie he'd forgotten, tiny pieces of a life we'd once imagined together, I packed everything carefully, drove to his parents' house, left the box on their porch, didn't knock, didn't wait. A few days later, another envelope appeared. Small claims court. Daniel was suing me. Emotional distress. Moving expenses. Household contributions. I almost laughed. Almost. My attorney simply smiled. We'll be fine. Court day came quickly. Daniel arrived beside his father. Neither looked at me. When the judge asked Daniel to explain his claim, he launched into an emotional speech. We were basically married. I gave her years of my life. She threw me away. I deserve compensation. The judge listened patiently, then asked one question after another. Was there a lease? No. Any ownership agreement? No. Written promise? Regarding the house? No. Documented rent payments? No. Each answer became quieter. Then my attorney stood. He handed over the property deed, the written 30-day notice, police documentation, photographs showing every one of Daniel's belongings had been safely returned. He spoke calmly. My client owned the property before the relationship began. The defendant had permission to live there. Permission that was legally withdrawn with proper notice. The judge reviewed everything, then looked at Daniel. I'm sorry. Sit. You have no legal claim. He struck the gavel. Case dismissed. Daniel's shoulders collapsed. His father stood up. This isn't fair. The judge looked directly at him. Sit down. Sit. He continued protesting. I said sit down. The courtroom became silent. Daniel wiped tears from his face as they gathered their papers. For a brief moment, our eyes met. Months earlier, I would have crossed the room to comfort him. Now, I simply watched him leave. There was no triumph, no satisfaction, only exhaustion, because sometimes winning a battle still feels like losing something that can never be replaced. 2 months later, life finally became quiet. Not perfect, just quiet. The angry phone calls stopped. The fake stories slowly disappeared. The screenshots from social media became less frequent until they stopped arriving altogether. Someone told me Daniel had deleted most of the posts about me. The fundraiser vanished too. Apparently, it hadn't gone the way he'd expected. Another mutual friend mentioned he'd moved back in with his parents. He had returned to his old job. He was already dating someone new. I surprised myself by not feeling jealous or angry. If anything, I hoped he had learned something from everything that happened. Whether he had or not wasn't my responsibility anymore. A week after the court case, I returned the engagement ring. Walking back into the jewelry store felt strangely symbolic. The same place where I'd once stood excitedly discussing diamond cuts and custom settings now became the place where I quietly handed over a dream that never came true. The refund wasn't everything I'd paid, but it was enough. I used part of it to pay down my credit card balance. With the rest, I bought something far less romantic. A new television. My best friend laughed when I told her, "So your engagement ring turned into movie nights." I smiled. Honestly, that feels like a better investment. The house still felt strange at first. Every room reminded me of plans that would never happen. The kitchen where we'd cook together. The living room where we'd binge-watched entire seasons of terrible reality shows. The backyard, where Daniel once insisted we'd someday build a fire pit. For a while, I considered selling the house altogether, starting over somewhere. No memory could follow me. Instead, I chose something harder. I changed everything. New paint, different furniture, new curtains, different artwork, room by room. The place stopped looking like our home. It slowly became mine. A college friend named Olivia needed somewhere to stay after accepting a job nearby. I rented her the spare bedroom. The extra company helped more than I expected. The house sounded alive again, not because of romance, because of laughter that wasn't cruel, conversations that didn't hide resentment, peace. Some friendships never recovered. Several mutual friends still believed Daniel's version of events. To them, I would always be the woman who threw her boyfriend out because he rejected a proposal. They never wanted to hear about the laughter, the humiliation, the public mockery. Eventually, I stopped trying to convince people. The people who truly mattered had stayed. The rest had already chosen their side. Mom called almost every Sunday. She had developed one new favorite question. So, I'd laugh before she even finished. No, you didn't even let me ask. I know exactly what you're going to ask. And I'm still not dating. You should. I'll get there. She never pushed. She simply reminded me that one person's cruelty didn't define everyone else. I wanted to believe her. Some days I did, some days I didn't. About a month after everything ended, I started therapy. At first, I almost canceled the appointment. Part of me thought I should simply move on. But moving on isn't the same as healing. The therapist asked a question during my first session that stayed with me. What hurt the most? I expected to answer, losing Daniel. Instead, I heard myself say, the laughter. That surprised me. It wasn't rejection. People are allowed to say no. It wasn't even the breakup. Relationships end every day. It was becoming someone's punchline during one of the most vulnerable moments of my life. Once I admitted that out loud, everything else started making sense. The anxiety, the embarrassment, the way I replayed that restaurant over and over in my head. Therapy didn't erase it. It simply helped me stop living inside it. I also started noticing things I had ignored during our relationship. Little moments. Small warning signs. Daniel always expected people to adapt to him. If dinner reservations went wrong, someone else had to fix it. If bills were forgotten, someone else handled them. If conversations became uncomfortable, he'd joke until the subject disappeared. Back then, I had called those habits quirks. Now I recognized them for what they really were. Warnings. Another lesson surprised me too. Love and legal protection can exist together. Owning the house before we moved in together had saved me months, maybe years of legal chaos. At first, I felt guilty for thinking that way. Eventually, I realized responsibility isn't cruelty. It's wisdom. 3 months after the proposal, I walked into a grocery store after work. I was comparing coffee brands when someone pushed a shopping cart around the corner. Daniel. For one brief second, we looked directly at each other. Neither of us smiled. Neither of us spoke. He looked away first. So did I. We passed each other like strangers. Oddly enough, that silence felt more healing than any apology could have. There was no dramatic confrontation, no emotional speech, just two people who had once imagined forever quietly accepting that forever had ended. A week later, another email arrived from Daniel's father. More threats, more promises of future lawsuits. I forwarded it directly to my attorney. He responded with a formal cease and desist letter. That was the last time I ever heard from any member of Daniel's family. Around that same time, Olivia convinced me to visit a local animal shelter. I just want to look, she promised. Everyone knows that's a lie. That's how a ridiculous-looking German Shepherd mix entered my life. He had enormous ears, oversized paws, and absolutely no understanding of personal space. Olivia wanted to name him Tank. I insisted that name didn't fit him. After 20 minutes of arguing, we settled on Murphy. Within days, Murphy had claimed the couch, half the backyard, and most of my heart. His excitement every time I came home reminded me that joy could still exist without conditions. Eventually, Mom set me up with the son of one of her friends. I already told him you're nervous. Thanks. Mom. He is too. That actually made me laugh. The date wasn't magical. There were no fireworks, no cinematic music, no instant certainty. And maybe that was exactly why I liked it. We simply talked, no games, no hidden expectations, no guessing. When he walked me to my car, he smiled. I'd like to see you again. I smiled back. I'd like that too. Driving home, I realized something. I wasn't trying to replace Daniel. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was simply allowing life to continue. People sometimes ask whether I regret proposing. The answer is yes. Not because a woman shouldn't propose. I'd do it again without hesitation for the right man. I regret proposing because I misunderstood the person standing across from me. I thought we had been reading the same story. He had been skimming a completely different book. Do I regret asking him to move out? No. Could I have handled it differently? Maybe. Could I have let guilt keep him in my home? Absolutely. But boundaries only matter if you're willing to enforce them. Some people still think I was cold. Maybe they're right. But protecting your peace isn't cruelty. Sometimes it's survival. The house doesn't feel haunted anymore. Murphy races through the hallway every morning like he owns the place. Olivia still steals my coffee creamer. The walls are different colors. The furniture no longer carries memories that make my chest ache. It finally feels like home again. Recently, someone commented on one of my social media posts. If Dance Sideshow side with flowers and a 10-page apology, would you take him back? I stared at the question for a long time. Then I closed the app without answering. Because the truth didn't need a public audience. No. Not because I hate him. Not because I want revenge. Because when life asked him how he would respond to my vulnerability, he laughed. When consequences arrived, he blamed everyone except himself. When accountability became uncomfortable, he chose victimhood instead of honesty. That isn't someone I can build a future with. 3 years sometimes feel wasted. Then I remind myself they weren't. They were tuition. Expensive tuition. They taught me what I will never accept again. Today I'm still single. Still healing. Still learning to trust. But I'm no longer living inside that restaurant. I'm living inside my own life. And for the first time in a very long time, that feels like enough.